Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We appreciate you being here and your interest in this topic. My name is Amy Landrum. I'm the Director of Creative Content and Campaigns for the Texas Workforce Commission. And I'm really here today to represent a large group of people at TWC who worked on this initiative. Many in our workforce division, our external relations, our employer and outreach initiatives divisions. A large group contributed to this effort. So I'm happy to be here to kind of represent the project for them. I was planning to be here also with our partner from the Texas Restaurant Association, Joe Monastero. Joe worked very closely with us on the project over the past year. Unfortunately, Joe had a conflict and couldn't be with us in the room, but because online video is so important to Joe and something that he can do in his sleep, he threw together a couple of videos for us over the weekend. So he will be here in the room with us and you'll get to hear from him up on the big screen. So we always appreciate that about great partners who want to work with us for a long time, and are willing to be flexible when we can't all be where we want to be at the same moment in time. With that said, let me just talk a little bit about our topic and we'll get started. The Restaurant Recovery Project, Restaurant Recovery Initiative, has been in play for about a year. This project launched about a year ago on May 20th, 2021. And this industry recovery initiative was in response to the COVID-19 pandemic impact on the restaurant industry. Joe sent us a great video. He's going to kind of set the framework for you on what happened to the restaurant industry in March 2020. The TWC, working in partnership with TRA, allotted funding to help with the industry recovery, and that's what this project represents. It's been in place for a year. We thought this was a great time to kind of present it as a case study, because we have 12 months of data to be able to talk to you about what worked. And it's a great time also to just acknowledge when projects like this meet their goals. It met the business objectives, and you'll see at the end, we ended up coming in at about 113% of goal. So when things work, when things help us reach those KPIs, it's important to talk about them because we learn new things. Through crisis situations and through emergency response, we often try innovative things, and sometimes that surfaces new practices for us that we want to use moving forward. And part of that is online training videos and the way that we set those videos up for our online audiences. So just a quick recap on our learning objectives. We're going to talk about how to develop online training content. Many of our outreach specialists do promotional content all the time, but online training is a little bit different. It takes a little bit more time. It's a little bit longer video, and it's always a challenge to capture our audience's attention and the time they need to actually learn something. We're also going to talk about how to use YouTube to reach new audiences. You know, many of us and many of those in our workforce boards distribute content through email, through social media channels, day in and day out. But it doesn't mean that the audience we're trying to reach is already following us. And that was the case in this situation. We knew that our owner-operator audience wasn't necessarily following our existing channels. So we had to get really creative and recognize that there are other ways people are looking for online content, and we had to figure out how to meet them where they were on YouTube, leveraging YouTube as a search engine. So we're going to talk about that and show you some of the ways that we leverage that resource through keywords and hashtags. And then finally, we're going to talk a little bit about the measurement aspect of this program, not only how we measure just video views, but also leverage Google Analytics to be able to really inform what our audience was doing and what they were consuming. And there were some very interesting learnings and outcomes out of that, again, we hope all of you will be able to apply moving forward. Before I launch in, if you haven't been in this room yet today, there is a little bit of a glitch with the HDMI cable in this projector. So if you see the slides fade out, they will come back. Thanks for your patience with that. So let's talk about the economic impact on the Texas restaurant industry. I'm going to do a little bit of a setup and then turn it over to Joe so you can hear directly from him. On March 15th, 2020, life was looking good. There were 50,000 restaurants in the state of Texas, 1.4 million workers. And TRA really considers itself the second largest private sector industry in Texas, with 70 billion in sales. So they contribute pretty significantly to the state's sales income. Things changed dramatically over the next 2 weeks as COVID hit the US. Let Joe tell us a little bit from his perspective.
Hi, everyone. Before I start, I just want to apologize that I can't be there in person. We have the National Restaurant Show going on up in Chicago. And so until they come up with cloning, can't be in two places at the same time. But super excited to share with you some insights of what we've accomplished together, the Texas Restaurant Association, along with the Texas Workforce Commission, and hope that you find some valuable insights. To start, Amy asked me to give you all a little bit of a background of sort of where we were before the pandemic and what did the pandemic itself, the shutdown, really mean for Texas restaurants. And I'm going to be very specific and say Texas restaurants because not just that it's our home state, but Texas fared far better than the majority of states, especially states like Illinois, New York, California. You might find there to be some political color differentials between those states, but I will say that we attribute wholeheartedly our ability to get through the pandemic to the cooperation of the governor's office and the support of the agencies like the Workforce Commission and TABC that allowed us to get the support to our members that was needed. So a huge thank you to all of you who played whatever part in making all that happen. So on to the economic impact piece. Before the pandemic, the restaurant industry in Texas, which is Texas's second largest private employer, employed 1.4 million employees across 50,000 units of food services, everything from your single independently owned barbecue restaurant all the way to a Starbucks. We had grossed in 2019, 70 billion in revenue, again, just for the state of Texas. And then came March 2020. This little thing called COVID that everyone had been hearing about started to really mean something. With just over 24 hours notice, the governor's office announced the shutdown. And that meant that our restaurants had to close their dining rooms and then immediately seek other ways to make revenue. A lot of things that are unknown about the restaurant industry came out during this time. For example, just how slim the margins of a restaurant are, on average 5 to 10%. How small the amount of liquidity a restaurant carries is, at most 7 to 10 days. And so restaurateurs all of a sudden found themselves with no ability to make money, pay their employees, pay the bills for their commodities, foodstuffs, alcohol, dry goods. And so it was a panic. And immediately we moved into action and we started to create alternative ways for them to make money, turning their dining rooms into little markets and grocery stores. Because the other thing people did not realize prior to the pandemic is the supply chains for restaurants and grocery stores are completely separate. And you can't take 51% of the food dollar, which is what restaurants contributed before the pandemic, away and not have there be a negative impact on the supply chain side of grocery stores. So restaurants started to become grocery stores as well. We also helped them to work with grocery stores to put their prepared foods in there to sell. And then obviously things like carry out, delivery, and of course, alcohol to go, which everyone enjoys, and we've now made permanent law. But at the height of the damage done, if you will, over 20% of businesses closed permanently. At one point, we had 38% of businesses temporarily closed, and over 600,000 of those 1.4 million employees out of work. And the overall gross revenue for 2020 dropped by nearly 45%. So as you can imagine, it was an incredibly challenging time that nobody could have imagined would go from being 2 or 3 weeks to over 2 years long.
Thank you, Joe. So the Restaurant Recovery Initiative really had two parts. Part one was for restaurant workers. free certification for restaurant workers. You may not realize, but anyone who works in the industry has to have their ServSafe food handler and their TABC seller server certification if they're going to serve alcohol. When there's a lapse in employment, for many people, those certifications expired and they needed to be renewed. Additionally, TRA knew that approximately a third of those 600,000 people impacted may not come back, and therefore they may need to recruit new people into the industry who needed to be certified for the first time. Now, these certifications are not really expensive. The ServSafe food handler you can do for $15.99. It's not really expensive, but oftentimes the restaurants themselves help pay for this for the workers. And so for the large restaurants, they can cover that. But for those small and medium size, the independents, the small mom and pops, this was a really heavy financial lift on top of the economic impact Joe mentioned, those really slim margins. So being able to offer free certifications and to be able to do that online through this portal really helped people be able to get back to work. And the program itself funded 11,000 licenses. So that was our business goal, was to get 11,000 people recertified, either getting one or both of these two certifications. Part 2 of the project involved owner-operator training. I'll leave that alone. TRA was hearing from their members that they needed help adjusting to this new normal, all these new changes, everything from new safety and sanitization protocols to this very rapid acceleration of digitization for restaurants who weren't able to do online ordering or curbside. They needed help getting there so that they could stay afloat and financially survive. So TRA was hearing from their members they needed training, and the kind of training that they needed didn't really exist in the marketplace at that time. So TRA approached TWC asking for assistance in developing a series of training videos. And the goal was that these videos would address 3 series of key topics that they were hearing from their members. Series number 1, the pivot of the customer experience, delivery, pickup, waiting, and the role of technology in today's restaurant world. So helping those customers who weren't doing these things yet, how to help them get there quickly. The series number 2 was really all about financially surviving beyond the pandemic. After people were able to start reopening, there was still those slim margins that Joe mentioned. Restaurants had to start really rethinking and preparing for the long term. It wasn't going to be over in 90 days. And then series number 3, making the most of your restaurant space. One of the biggest things that came out of the pandemic was customers really wanted that outdoor dining experience, and they wanted more room, that social distancing indoors. So really helping restaurants rethink the dining space inside and outside, and offering content to help give them guidance on how to do that. So this project, the big build of this project, separate from the certifications, was how do we very quickly roll out a series of videos that addresses all of these topics that were in demand. One of the first things that we had to think about was size. People have a very limited attention span, and we know that. We were already keeping those promotional videos to 7 seconds, 10 seconds, 30 seconds. So how do we serve up training that people will stick around for? So the decision that was made is, let's keep those training videos 3 minutes or less. And then that means we have a lot of videos because we have a lot of topics. So we ultimately rolled out 27 separate videos in English and in Spanish for a total of 54 videos. It was a lot of content to put together in a very short time on a very limited budget. So we're going to talk a little bit today about how we did that, what we learned, how we pivoted from video series 1 to 2, and what we would do different in the future. But I think before I launch in, it's really important for you to see one of those videos. If you haven't seen them yet, it's good to get introduced to what these videos look like, the kind of message that they delivered, and the tone. So we're going to play for you next the very first intro video that kicked off the whole series. And give me just a minute to get that video teed up to play.
When my business was ready to start hiring, I signed up for Paychecks Online. They make it easy for me to pay my team and my taxes.
The Texas Workforce Commission has partnered with the Texas Restaurant Association to explain how COVID-19 has changed the industry. Customers love the ease and joy of in-house dining. Restaurant owners love serving them. The COVID-19 pandemic turned that upside down. Many restaurants faced temporary closure or had to find other ways to feed their customers. Some of the changes brought good new options, new sources of revenue, and new customers. For many, carryout has been a lifeline for survival. It can be a big part of your business for years to come. Carryout options include curbside pickup, drive-through, carryout, third-party or in-house delivery, meal kits, and contactless payment. According to a National Restaurant Association survey from September 2020, 67% of restaurants provided curbside takeout, 27% used third-party delivery, 17% offered in-house delivery, and 3% added a drive-through. Your creativity and flexibility saved your employees and kept your customers coming in the door. While dining rooms in Texas are open, your customers may still prefer carry-out meals. Innovation and adoption of technology helped you survive the pandemic. It can now help your business to thrive. While carry-out dining sales aren't making up for lost dine-in sales, it provides an opportunity. This series will help you make carry-out dining a permanent revenue-thriving option. In this series, we'll explore how to increase carry-out food sales, design a permanent pickup area, create a carry-out menu, package carry-out food for the best presentation, negotiate third-party delivery contracts, safely sell and deliver alcohol to go, expand your digital brand presence and increase sales, effectively use technology for customer transactions, integrate contactless pickup and payment, and control dining capacity and physical distancing. Whether you're new to off-premises ordering or a pro, this series has strategies to help you grow. You survived 2020. Now it's time to thrive in 2021. Restaurants are resilient. Thanks for joining us for this video series.
All right, so you got a little bit of a taste of what some of those videos are like. One of the things that we got asked to talk about specifically today is how do we write scripts for 27 videos? It's a lot of content. And how do you change your writing style from promotional videos to training videos? So it was important to Joe that he addressed that. And we also invited our videographer to come in and give you some tips too. So I'm going to give you a chance to hear from them and hear Joe talk about this kind of triangle, this three-pronged approach that went into script writing, leveraging subject matter experts from TRA and their members, TWC, bringing in the contextual considerations, and then bringing in the videographer perspective, who had to find our on-screen talent, find places to film, go shoot B-roll in restaurants, and then bring that all together in a way that would be engaging for people to keep their attention.
One of the best examples of how the collaboration of this project resulted in exactly what we were hoping to achieve was how we created the videos. If you think about the triangle of bringing in a great video production crew, our members and other subject matter experts to come in and help with script writing, and then of course the team at TWC that looked at things from the perspective of the contextual considerations and how they aligned with the policies of the agency. This collaboration and working together ensured that not only was the original scope of work correct, but in execution, we were able to bring what we knew restaurants needed to hear, or what would be sort of a permanent thing coming out of the pandemic, and how best to position it for them to understand how to take, for example, to go and delivery, which in back the days when I was an operator myself was somewhat of an annoyance, something you didn't want to have to deal with. And now it's in some cases upwards of 35 to 40% of the revenue that a restaurant brings in. So a very important piece of what they do today. And that means changing logistically how you're going to physically execute, carry out and delivery. And so writing these scripts and making sure that it hit all of the overall objectives we had for the project, but also conveyed that knowledge to the employer. It was an amazing synergy, and one I hope we get to repeat again someday.
How's it going, everyone? My name is Michael Archery, and I'm with OWN Media based in North Texas. It was a pleasure to work with the Texas Restaurant Association along with the Texas Workforce Commission on this project. One of the things that we like to focus on here at OWN Media is making videos that work. Not only do we want to make videos that are creative or that look cool or that are bright and colorful and energetic, but we want to make videos that accomplish a solution. And so that's one of the things that we focused on with the project with the Texas Workforce Commission and the Texas Restaurant Association. So we really focused on 3 areas to make sure we made videos that work. The first thing we did was we focused on keeping the videos short. In today's age, everybody's attention span is getting shorter and shorter when it comes to social media and consuming, content on their mobile device. So we wanted to make sure that we kept the scripts as truncated as possible and kept the videos short and what I would call edutainment, right? So you want to educate, but you also want to have a little bit of an entertainment factor to make sure that you keep your audience captivated when they're competing against so many other media sources. The second thing that we wanted to do was make it visually entertaining. That's part of that edutainment factor. So whether that was changing a wardrobe with our talent or whether that was finding a studio spot that looked a certain way, we wanted to make sure the videos were visually entertaining, good B-roll, bright colors, the motion graphics, keeping the videos moving so it wasn't too monotonous or too static, if you will. We wanted to keep it visually entertaining. And the third thing that we wanted to do is to reverse engineer. What do I mean by reverse engineer? When you reverse engineer, you got to understand what the outcome that you're looking to have. What's the solution that you want to fix, right? So we understood we wanted to talk to the restaurateurs and those who were in the restaurant industry to make sure that they were best prepared for the pandemic and how to recover from the pandemic. So with that in mind, we wanted to create videos that had the right vocab, the right nomenclature, the right look associated with the restaurant industry to make them understandable, but also easily digestible, because we understood that we were going to have workers within the industry all over the state and within different positions and layers within the restaurant industry. So it needs to be easily digestible for everyone.
Thank you, Joe and Micah. A couple of things I'll add on to that. Just several of you asked me some questions before the session started and what we're looking for some specifics. Giovanni, I know you're working on planning your first video series. So one of the things is when the subject matter experts first delivered those first draft scripts, they were really long. They were way longer than we had planned. Some of them came in at 6 to 8 minutes. So too long. And then when you think about translating them, even too longer, right? So one of the things we had to do as part of TWC's role, providing those contextual considerations and usage considerations, we had to not be afraid to cut those scripts back. Sometimes we were cutting them in half. Looking at things with a critical lens. Where do we have redundant language? Where do we have run-on sentences? Where do we bring it back down to where it's going to be as consumable as possible for our end user? Secondly, the other thing we looked at is Once we had all the scripts set, we sent them to a translation partner who translated them. Then we brought them in and had a team member look at them again. Were the translations right for our Texas markets? We also invited several of our workforce boards to come in and review those English and Spanish scripts and make sure that the Spanish translations were going to work in El Paso and McAllen and other areas of the state where there might be nuances in language. That was really important to us to invite our workforce board partners in and really represent their audiences that way. Finally, we had to think about things like what was happening with policy, with COVID policy in the state. After we produced Series 1 videos, the mask mandate was lifted. And that was after we had approved all the content for video series 2 and 3. I'll never forget that day because we had to sit down and take a new pass at video series 2 and 3 scripts because suddenly mask mandates were lifted and we had to rethink some of the verbiage in those videos to make sure that it was now current with what was happening in the market. So there were moments in time that we had to do that. And I think that leads us to our next topic, which is our feedback learning loop. If you heard one of our speakers yesterday, I believe it was Dr. Parrish, she talked about design thinking and that importance of doing a rough draft, testing out your content, and then getting customer feedback before you refine it. That is exactly what we did in this process. So video series number 1, we were really looking at video quantity and making sure we covered all the topics. I think we rolled out 12 videos in series 1. And after we came back, we said that was too many. Let's pare it back to 6 or 7 for series 2. Video length, really making sure those videos were the length we wanted. Some of them came in a little bit long. So when we got to series 2, we really were okay, very comfortable cutting out some of that scripting and making sure things were very succinct as possible. 3, we went into it wanting to have as much diversity as possible. It's a lot of content. And if the same customers were viewing multiple videos, we wanted there to be visual interest. We wanted there to be differentiation. However, one of the other challenges was at this time, there was a worker shortage. So when we had casting calls for on-screen talent, we got this lovely young woman that you saw here, and we got a few others, but we didn't get the diversity of talent that we were hoping for, that were able to do on-screen reads with the quality that this woman was. So we ended up leveraging her for all 3 video series. We did have some switch outs on the Spanish language talent. And so in order to keep it fresh, she changed her wardrobe. We changed the camera angles. We also hope to film her in 3 different locations. As you can imagine, filming her in a restaurant, very noisy, a lot of background noise, that didn't work. So they used a private studio. But again, there was a lot of studio closures at that time. So we ended up filming her in one place. So I think it's just important to mention that because with every project, there are going to be constraints. We all know, we all deal with that every time. And so just looking to try to work with what you've got and make things work within the limitations that you have. Once we rolled out video series number 1 and we were working on scripting for 2, and then we had to redo those scripts, we took another pass at what did we learn? At this point now, video series 1 has been out in market running for about 30 days. And so we're able to gauge how those videos are performing for us. One of the things we noticed that really came to light, potentially a bit as an afterthought, is, TWC taking the lead on distributing that content, owner operators weren't necessarily following TWC on our social media channels. We weren't able to reach that target audience directly like TRA is able to. So we really took a fresh look at the distribution strategy, and we really leveraged TRA's ability to get the message out there through their newsletter. They amped up their newsletters. Instead of just doing once a month, they started doing once a week. and highlighting different video topics in those weekly push outs to their members. We also took a step back and really started thinking about YouTube and how we could better leverage YouTube to go capture that owner operator audience and bring them to our content. Let me let you hear from Joe and get his take on this, and then we'll talk more about YouTube.
One of the other things that the group did that I think in the long term is a best practice for anyone who's doing a series of videos like this is that we didn't try to do them all at once. We had them staggered into 3 different groups. So we could take the time to focus in on videos of a like topic and make sure that those scripts aligned to what we knew we could actually film, what was feasible to capture on B-roll. And then we took a continuous improvement approach to reviewing what was being done, making sure the scripts were reviewed by all the right stakeholders, getting feedback from our members and bringing that to the table, TWC, getting feedback from your board. One of the other things that the group did that I think in the long term is a best practice for anyone who's doing a series of videos like this is that we didn't try to do them all at once. We had them staggered into 3 different groups. So we could take the time to focus in on videos of a like topic and make sure that those scripts aligned to what we knew we could actually film, what was feasible to capture on B-roll. And then we took a continuous improvement approach to reviewing what was being done, making sure the scripts were reviewed by all the right stakeholders, getting feedback from our members and bringing that to the table, TWC, getting feedback from your board, and putting all of that together. In some ways, I almost wish we had gone back and redid the first set of videos, because by the time we got to the third, we'd made so many changes and improvements and little things we did. We did go back and edit quite a bit in the first topic, probably the most of any of the 3. But I think it was the constant communication, our weekly meetings, and collaboration on exactly what we wanted the outcome to be before we ever put it public, that really allowed us to refine and sort of hit the bullseye, if you will, on delivering videos that achieve the goals of every one of the topics.
Thank you, Joe. We were due for a glitch, so there it was, and hopefully we got that out of the way. All right. Finally, moving on. I think the other thing that is important that came out of that feedback loop process was what Joe didn't mention is we were meeting with TRA weekly, every week, meeting with them to hear what were they hearing from their members and what were we hearing from our workforce board partners. That ability to constantly be communicating to one another and out with all these different stakeholders is really what was, I think, the secret sauce behind this project. Joe was able to report in weekly. What was the hot topic with members this week? What were they emailing about? What were they asking about? That enabled us to change our, not only influence our content, but also change our distribution strategy. We were also hearing in from our workforce partners from all over the state, hearing what they were needing in terms of hiring and recruiting efforts, the challenges they were having there. So that really came together as part of that feedback loop. And that feedback loop has run 12 full months. We're still in touch with Joe, regularly getting that feedback from him. And I think if there's one thing, one big takeaway from all of this is when you have a partner, communicate with them often and have honest conversations about what you're hearing so that you can adjust to meet people where they are. I have a video to play here on alcohol to go. I'm going to go ahead and skip that and keep us moving. But one thing I'll just mention here, and you can watch it on your own. Alcohol to go was a really hot topic for members. It was offered up initially as a temporary business solution so that restaurants could keep the money coming in the door. And it became so successful that it became permanent law. So halfway through this project, we were able to talk about that evolution, The challenge, though, that TRA had is they were just getting inundated with questions about how to safely serve alcohol to go, how to meet all those new permitting restrictions from TABC. So they were able to use the video, the 2 videos on alcohol to go, to really drive home the message. We are your expert on these topics, and TABC is your expert on this topic. Really driving their members to TABC, to that TABC website, to go there and get all the permitting information. So that helped TRA kind of keep the conversation where it needed to be. And then secondly, TABC stepped up in their partner role and helped further promote this initiative and promote the certifications and the training. And by having that promotional lift from TABC through their social media channels really helped drive home. So these 2 videos were 2 of the most successful, the most viewed of the whole program, because they were all about bringing in new revenue. All right, let's talk for a minute about YouTube as a search engine. Several of our colleagues that we work with day in and day out on videos and outreach strategy kind of made the comment, you know, we're really just using YouTube as an online file cabinet for our video files. And that's really true. A lot of times we just put those videos up there and then we just kind of expect people to be able to find them. We don't often have the capacity, the man hours, to really make those online videos effective. This project really pushed us to get innovative. Our team learned how to use YouTube differently and better, how to really optimize for online search. And through those learnings and being able to see the tangible results of that payoff will become best practice for us in our other videos in the future. So I'm going to take a minute and just give you some specific examples of what we're talking about here. First, it really all boils down to search terms. When you go to any search engine, whether it's Google, Bing, YouTube, or other, you're typing in words that make sense to you. So you may be thinking, I need to change my restaurant back of house operations. If you work in a restaurant, you know what back of house means. That term is natural to you. That may not have been a term that naturally surfaced for us. So by going in and searching, and YouTube will tell you what people are searching for, like-minded terms, like-minded phrases, you can really see what people are actually searching for. By doing that, we actually changed the video titles on our YouTube playlist to align closer to what people were searching for. We also looked at keywords. What were the top 10 keywords in the space, and also the hashtags. And by doing that, we were able to identify 5 hashtags that were really helping people find us and 10 keywords. And I'm going to exit out of this for just a second and show you some examples of those. So when you go to the YouTube playlist, sorry, I just lost my mouse. What happened? Happened again. I'm going to see if you can help me. It's been a day. Let's see here. Just like it freezes up every once in a while. Okay, well, we will. We may or may not show you that. I don't know. Marcus, I'll keep talking and I'm gonna let Marcus troubleshoot because he's really good at that. We'll see if we can get that back up and running. Anyway, some of the hashtags that we ended up using associated with all of these videos were hashtag I love TX restaurants. That's very common usage for TRA and its members. Restaurant recovery, restaurant design. So really trying to surface not what we thought the content should be, but what the owner operators were searching for online. If we're able to show you an example of that, did you get it up? Okay, great. I don't think it's connecting. Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Marcus. By the way, Marcus did a lot of this SEO work and getting all these videos online. So if you want to deep dive on this, he's your guy. Okay, so you can see here on this slide, I know it's really small, but we actually gave a pretty detailed abstract. So not just telling people the title of the video, but giving them an abstract and leveraging all those keywords that were part of our scripts, giving them a bulleted list of what they were going to learn, how to accept customer orders, how to evaluate an online ordering system, how to determine which carryout model is best for you. This how-to approach with language is what was helping surface in search. Finally, we were giving a section and pointing people to 2 more videos, because if someone is finding these videos through search, then that means they may not know the full playlist is there. So we chose 2 similar topics to point customers to. So if they came in to learn about one topic, we sent them to learn about designing a permanent pickup area or how to negotiate third-party contracts. So really helping them connect the dots through these lengthy playlists. We always mention Texas Workforce Commission restaurant recovery landing page, and we also always directed them back to TRA's website. And then finally, you can see there an example of those 10 or 12 or so keywords that we found through our research and those hashtags. And again, that's what really was a difference maker in helping us capture owner operators who were not already following our social channels. So let's talk about results. I started off by mentioning that we thought this would be a great case study because it did hit its business goals. I mentioned at the beginning, our goal was to have 11,000 people take advantage of those certifications. The program reached that goal about 6 weeks ago, and by the end of April had exceeded that goal, was at 113% of goal. So at that point had about 12,513 certifications taken. It may seem like a small number, but as you know, anytime you have a budget and you have limited resources, when you hit a goal and you hit it early, it's cause for celebration. So take a moment to recognize that and think about what worked well. When we think about the owner operator training, the landing page got over 7,000 views, and we were able to track that through Google Analytics. The videos themselves received over 4,000 views, and that was just on YouTube. They received even more views when they were pushed out and distributed over social channels. Finally, our twc.texas.gov homepage actually helped direct traffic. So people who were coming to the TWC website, we were able to direct them to that certification portal. And we know that we sent over 24,000 people from the TWC homepage to that TRA certification portal, really directly driving people to take advantage of the certification opportunity. Also, it's important to TRA to really think about how employers were impacted. So they're estimating that when they think about unique employers served by the program, 11,625 employers served by this program. and over 10,000 restaurant locations served. So for TRA, the program met the objectives and they were very happy with the results. But there were also some unintended results that came out of this. So I'm going to end with one more video from Joe to just give you kind of the closeout on their take on the program.
In addition to what you just learned about on the previous slide, some of the most impactful benefits that came from the collaboration in this grant project were not planned at all. But I would say that today, more than before the pandemic, and certainly more than before we did this grant project, the amount of understanding on the part of TWC of the nuances of what goes on in our industry has increased. And more importantly, on the part of our membership, they no longer look at TWC as the agency that contacts them only when there's an unemployment claim to be reviewed or contested, or a chargeback to be fought or accepted, but a true partner in workforce development. And given the fact that we are still 100,000 employees shy in our industry just for Texas, and our projections of growth of this industry and the need for employees will hit over 250,000 by 2024, it's important that they understand that TWC, as well as all the workforce solutions boards, are resources. They're places to go to find employees, to get the word out about roles that you have open. And one of the things that we did is we aligned the 23 chapters that make up the Texas Restaurant Association with the 28 workforce solutions boards, and had one very large Zoom call to introduce all of the boards directors of our various chapters with the executives of the workforce solutions boards. And from that has come collaboration on job fairs and the promotion of opportunities in the industry. And surely I think the beginning of our membership looking very differently at TWC. Again, more as a partner, as it should be, someone to work with in developing your own workforce and having a healthy culture in your company. We also had the opportunity to share and spread the word about opportunities for childcare, which at one point was a critical block to bringing people back to work. It's still a major issue. It always will be. A significant portion of the employees in our industry are single parents. But coming out of this increased collaboration, this opportunity for our membership to view the Workforce Commission as a true partner is probably one of the best unintended consequences I've ever seen. And we're very grateful for it.
Thank you again, Joe. So finally, just to wrap up here, as Joe mentioned, really the long-term impact beyond just the certification opportunity and the owner-operator training was being able to connect the 28 workforce boards with the 23 TRA chapters. Many of them have collaborated over the past year on all kinds of hiring events around the state. Rural Capital Area put on a great employer webinar. Alamo board and Gulf Coast board put on some really interesting events about this time a year ago, which were joint vaccination events and hiring events. So really trying to put that support there for people to get back to work. And then we've seen some really innovative marketing campaigns that we've helped our North Texas partners issue out in their neck of the woods. So all kinds of opportunities that are in place now for the long term with the chapters and the boards working together. Finally, on my last slide, I want to point out one other thing that we felt like was really important to talk about here, that using Google Analytics really helped us surface with this program. I mentioned to you at the beginning that we knew going into it, we didn't have owner operators following TWC on social. And so if we had only relied on our social media channels, we probably wouldn't have reached the right audience. What you're looking at here on this slide are two pie charts that we get from Google Analytics, page views and referring sources. I'm going to start with referring sources, the pie chart over on the right. The large section of the chart, the slice that's in blue, 37%, comes from organic search. So organic search is how people found us just by using search engines like YouTube and Google. When the program first kicked off in the first 30 days, that was the smallest slice of the pie because not many people were finding the content. As we added those keywords and those search terms and really built out that YouTube playlist, we began to see that organic search slice of the pie grow. And by the end of that 12-month period, be at 37%. So that really helped us see that putting that investment into YouTube as our search engine really paid off and helped us reach far more people than we might have otherwise. Secondly, the slice of the pie that's orange, the 34%, that represents referrals. And that means traffic that was coming into the videos from outside sources like TRA's newsletter. So TRA really amping up their outreach to owner operators with those weekly newsletter pushes also, again, drove the right audience to the content. Finally, I'm going to come back over here to page views from Texas. We were wanting to always keep a lens on where was the traffic coming from. The program actually impacted people in almost every county in Texas that has a restaurant. Some counties don't, but most counties were impacted by this program. And so this enabled us to always keep a lens on where that traffic was coming in from. The big markets like Houston, Dallas, San Antonio were always in the top 5, but occasionally we'd have a week like what we ended with here, where the small community of Rosenberg, population 30,000, snuck up into the top 5. And when TRA looked into that, they found they had a couple of member restaurants in that area that just happened to really take advantage of the training in that last reporting timeframe to drive up the traffic coming from there. So it was important to them to see where the viewers were coming in from. They were also getting views from other states. So you can see here, 87% of the traffic was coming from in-state, with the rest coming from other states. Many of TRA's sister entities from other states like California, New York, and others were watching the program either to leverage the training themselves or get ideas for their own content. With that, I'm going to wrap up and ask if you have any questions. Thank you so much.
Great presentation. I believe Joe mentioned about childcare and the role that it had with the restaurant association. Are we specifically speaking to the SIR childcare program?
Yes, and TRA did work to promote that program to its members. We added information about it on the landing page.
Did we get any feedback from the TRA about how they perceived from their employees the value of the SIR investment, and any analytical data that can be shared back to Texas Workforce Commission to say this was, you know, the multiplier, the economic impact to it, what it meant in terms of the economy?
Yeah, that's a great question. Childcare, as we've heard in all of our presentations that we've been in today, is really important at helping get people back to work. I don't think that we have any analytics specifically to share with you today, but we can check with Joe to see if we have any as a follow-on. What we do know, what TRA was telling us pretty regularly throughout the process was there were numerous barriers to just getting people back to work. Most of it grounded in safety, and then some of it grounded in childcare. Joe will tell you many people in the restaurant industry are single parents. So that was important for them. What I'll do though is we'll check with Joe to see if he has any other data that we can roll forward in the future. Thank you. Any other questions, or Diana, anything online? Thank you. All right. Well, we know, anything else? Okay. We know that you're ready to get on the road. So we're here if you have any other questions. Thank you so much for joining us.